arts and science person. She has been involved with Seasearch for a number of years and is a Seasearch coordinator for Dorset. Almost encyclopedic knowledge of marine stuff. Was the co-author of the recent Seasearch Fish ID book, which comes highly recommended, and is an expert on a number of areas. So this evening, Linda is going to go through hermits and spiders, spider crabs, which is part of the, I would say, research. So part of the work she's currently doing to put together a crustaceans book, which will be going out for publication, and will
next year.
Sometime, yeah, will be out sometime next year. I think you were saying that you hope to have the text going to publication sometime this year, but so publication in the first half of next year.
Yeah, so we have to deliver by the end of July. So if anybody's got hermit spider crab pictures, I'd be very interested if you'd like to share them with me. We consider for them including in the book.
Okay, a couple of minutes for any more latecomers. I'm going to try and mute everybody so that.
Hello, Lynn. Hello, Tony.
Hello, John. Good to hear you.
Yeah.
So, John, are you going down to the dive show at the weekend?
Hopefully on Saturday.
Okay, I should probably see you there then.
I was told that by somebody else.
Okay.
Paul Frank.
Okay, yeah, Frank's going down as well, all right, but I'm not sure what time.
Yeah. Can you make your way to Limerick and I can give you a lift or anything, or are you okay?
I'll probably go via Port Dominus, which is
all right. Okay.
Easier. Okay, no, yeah. I'll see you down there. I'm going to get down early. They want to put the underwater photography exhibition together again.
Crabs.
Crabs. Sorry. Okay, it's now 5:05. So Lynn, I'll hand over to you and let you get started.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me, Tony. It's always a pleasure to come and talk to you, so to speak. Well, I've been working with crabs and spider crabs and hermit crabs, trying to sort them out for this crustacean guide I'm putting together. And I've always been interested in hermit crabs because I felt that there were ways that you should be able to identify them rather than just saying it was a hermit crab. So this little fellow up here, you can see there's quite a lot of detail in not a particularly macro photograph. You can see the eye colours, you can see the colour of the antennules here, and the pattern on these antennae. They turn out to be unique as well. This one's living in a big bit of sponge. And it's getting a good view of the colours of its legs, and basically you've got a really excellent portrait there to be working with. So I felt these were interesting animals to try and tackle. So if we can move forward to the next one. So I thought I'd try and identify hermit crabs. So you go to all the text and you're faced with this sort of air-fixed model of a crab, which you have to piece together. If you use the key in the guide, it picks out a couple of things on a really minute body part and describes the teeth or the precise shape at the corners or something. And of course, to do that, you need a dead crab, which is kind of not very encouraging. In the field, you can see these parts. So why on earth can't we find some better ways of getting a handle on what these bits of the animal that we can see easily, and they're quite interestingly coloured and patterned. So can we do more with this? So you're looking at the big antennules. The eyes are very important when it comes to colour, and obviously the claws, because that's pretty well all you ever see of a hermit crab, sticking out of its shell. So you need to try and ground truth some of these features that you can see on the animal and relate it back to some of this Airfix kit that the guidebook gives us. So I gave David Kipling a challenge. Oh yes, and colour, of course. This Airfix kit isn't coloured, so you need to paint your Airfix kit. And once you've got this colour pattern, I think you're onto something. And I gave David Kipling the challenge to go and get some hermit crab pictures when he was in Loch Fyne last year. And the question was really, can you get good enough pictures of a hermit crab to really see the detail in their faces and their claws? And he came back, these are all very small crabs, showing absolutely you can do exactly that. And you can see that these 4 crabs are very different in terms of their eye colour, the patterns on their mouth parts. This one's got really stripy football socks leg colours. This one's got bright purple bluish antennules. And this guy here is a really red hairy animal. Distinctly different animals, but then we need to give them a name. And how on earth do you start that? Because you've got your Airfix kit and you've got these pictures. So how do you relate the two together? And I found this absolutely amazing paper by a Spanish group, which describes the unique live colour patterns for hermit crabs. They've done it for Spain, but they've covered all the species that we get in Ireland. So that, if you can get hold of that, I've given Tony a document that's got these links. You can get it online for nothing. So if you can get hold of that one, it's absolutely amazing. So instead of a black and white Airfix kit, we've now got a colour one. And they're only showing the parts that we can see when we see a hermit crab. So you've got the claws. This one, you can tell the sex by the colour of the claws. You've got the very distinctive eye colours. They describe the eye colour. And the antennae, these ones are very long in this species. And then this one has chocolate and dark blue football socks as well. And if you look at the front of the animal, it's got these brilliantly marked white, chocolate brown little mouth parts, which it sort of twiddles around. And I think they use them for communication. So that's one Anapagurus. And then you've got this other species. You can see immediately, now that you've coloured your Airfix kit, that these are totally different animals. You've got nice red claws, fairly plain markings there. You've only got red and white striped socks on the other legs. And the antennae and eyes, they're quite different. The antennae are much shorter. The eyes are quite a different colour. They're sort of dark with, I think it probably says red spots in the text if you get in close there. So now that you've got this colour, you can get your photographs of the front end of your crab, and you'll have the pictures of the eyes and the claws and everything. So it really is a useful tool, and you really can, without killing your animal, come back with an answer. So if you look at this Anapagurus here, you've got those very long antennae. They've got the descriptions that these Spanish people give are excellent, and they describe the dark chocolate brown marks on the antennae. So if you've got a good screen and a decent photograph, you can really zoom in into your animal. You can see all that. In this species, they happen to be hairy, and that's also visible. You can see the colour of the claws. This is a male with the big brown claws. This female's got rather paler one over here. But these, this is quite an easy thing to see on this animal. You can see his blue and chocolate and white striped football socks on these legs. And you can see the bright white markings on its mouth parts, maxillipeds. And he's flashing them at this girl, trying to attract the two together. And this this photograph was just taken watching this interaction between this pair of hermit crabs. So you could say I really minimally disturbed them, but I then came back with all the data I needed to go back to Almond's book, photo pictures, and decide which species I'd got. And that wasn't a particularly macro photo. So, you know, some people who are really into the deep macro, so to speak, shouldn't have any trouble in getting adequate images that you can then use Almond's guide to track down your crab. So we're looking at Anapaguras in Ireland. Unfortunately, there aren't many records. It's mostly a sort of near shore species, fairly shallow water. The yellow spots are Seasearch records, so there's relatively few Seasearch records because Seasearchers don't record hermit crabs until now. And then trying to look for some more Irish records, all I could find was what's on the Biodiversity Data Centre, which is currently a few records, Rathlin up there, and then scattered carrying along the south coast. But Selby, who was publishing in 1921, showed that records taken by the Helga, which was run by the fisheries research people, showed that it occurs all around the Irish coasts. So really, anybody with good photography can probably produce numerous records for crabs all around Ireland with sort of minimal effort, really. And with Almond's key, you'll be able to really get a handle on it. Then if you look at the smooth hermit crab, Anapaguras levis, you see it's quite a different animal. Its antennae are quite a different colour. And this one, I think they look slightly beaded. So it's got segments that are wider and then narrowed down to the next one. So that one's quite different to the rather spotty antennae of the first one we were looking at. This one's only got orange football socks and a very plain, smooth claw. It still has these, I don't know, semaphore kit, I call it, up at the front here in its mouth parts, used for communication. You've got the eye colours quite clear here, and you've got relatively short antennules. So just by looking at those two photographs, you've got a portrait of two very different animals. And given the work by those Spanish people, you can give this one a name. Again, it's fairly scattered distribution. It seems to be more offshore. There are fewer records near shore. But if you start looking at, I went back and looked at some of my Scottish Seasearch work, and with the Scottish sea loch pictures I'd taken, and they're pretty well as common as any of the other hermit crabs, this particular species in the Scottish sea lochs. Had one record from South Down here, and I've had one shore record from South Devon. And then again, Selby, 1921, records taken by the Helga, occurs all around the Irish coast. But there's only, looks like it's probably from Killary Harbour or somewhere like that. So, you know, get out there and have a look, because I'm sure these animals are around. We're just, oh, that's a hermit crab, and you pass on to the next animal, or the next nudibranch, probably. If you really get up close and personal with these, you can see this Anapaguras here. It's got very long antennae compared with its eyes. The eyes are quite a characteristic colour. The guide says they've got red spotting. It probably doesn't come across the internet very well. And the antennules have got brown lines, and they've also got these extremely long setae on them, hairs. And again, you can see it again in this one. And these aren't particularly macro photos, so you know, you can be fairly backed off your animal. And again, the eye colour's coming through well here, sort of greenish, gold, red spots probably. And then George and I were working in the sea lochs in west coast of Scotland, and we had this guy. You can see it's got a very different face to this one. Its antennules are much shorter. Its eyes are bluey, I don't know, duck egg green, no, O'Donnell maybe. Its semaphore kit shows up nicely here in George's photo. So again, that takes us back to the smooth hermit crab. Quite different faces. And one character which I find particularly useful for looking at hermit crabs is look at the antennae. Question 1, are they plain or have they got spots? So here we've got 5 species. These are all the ones we've got on the Irish list, 5 species. But you can see immediately that the pattern on the antennae is different, unique to each species. So you've got your 3 Anapaguras ones down here. Quite different sort of proportions of spots. This one's red and shiny, very small spotting. This was the one where they look to me as though they're sort of slightly beaded, so there's narrow and wider portions along the antennae. It's a much proportionally wider antenna than this one as well. And then there's one Pagura species, the hairy hermit crab, which has spotted antennae. So if you've got you'll be able to see this in most of your pictures, I'm sure, if you've got the face of the animal. So check out which of these antennae patterns it has. And then you can get into the Pagura species. You see immediately they haven't got spotty antennae. But this one has got terrific markings on it. This one's probably a pretty small animal, maybe a centimetre across the shell here. Bright yellow antennules, brilliant green eyes, red and brown football socks. And in the mouth parts here, the maxillipeds, bright yellow and white. So there's an awful lot of detail here that you can then go and look at Almond's guide and pick up which species you've got. This is just the common hermit crab. But if you get up close and personal, they've really got terrific amount of detail and colour that makes them, you know, there's a lot of characters there that you can use to check out which species you have. And then this one, I'm sure we ought to have around more often. Rob's picture from Scottish sea loch. There's this species, I think people confuse a lot with the common hermit crab. This one, the English name we've given it is the downy hermit crab because it's much less hairy than the hairy hermit crab. It's also this very brilliant red, predominantly red colour. Got a plain orange antenna. Note this one is different colour to this common hermit crab. This is rather yellow. This is very orangey. And look at the eyes, they're quite different. This one's O'Donnell with black spots. This guy's, I don't know, duck egg green, quite different, very different shape. And look at his antennules. These ones are bright yellow. These ones are rather plain. So there's a lots of information in here to check out. And these animals are probably about the same size, a couple of, maybe maximum a centimetre across the shell. They're quite small animals, so it doesn't need to be a great big one. You can still be certain which one you have. So continuing with the hermit crab theme, you've got the South Paw hermit crab, Diogenes pugilata. There was only one species on the British and Irish lists, one species of Diogenes, and they gave it this name. The distinguishing feature of this hermit crab is it's the left claw that is big, runs around, it's usually bright white like this, and if they run backwards, it's very distinctive the way it drags it across the sediment in front of, behind it, or as it runs away from you anyway. It's the left claw, and that's the thing that gives you the Diogenes, the South Claw hermit, South Claw hermit crab. So, needless to say, the Spanish people got into looking at Diogenes, which was always considered to be a very, very variable species. And I think there was confusion because the sort of guide that we mostly use in England is one by Ingle. And if you look at his description, he's used individuals from an English site and also describing the colours from ones in Portugal, which is a bit unfortunate because the Spanish guys then got into looking at this Diogenes genus, and they looked at the genetics of this thing, and they looked at the morphology, and they found that this very variable thing that people were calling Diogenes pugulator turns out to be at least 3 in the Mediterranean, West Mediterranean, and since this paper was written, there have been 2 identified from the Black Sea. So this very variable animal was actually a mix of at least 5 different species. So which one have we got in Ireland? The true pugulator is Mediterranean only. This one, which is a new species, completely is Western Mediterranean, Portugal and Spain. So, you know, we may have it here already, or if not, it may be coming. But the one we have now and is this one, which they're calling Curvy Manus, which was described by this man Clement from the south of France in 1874. But they look back at his pictures and they do provide a really convincing description of this animal. So they've just rooted this one out of the archives and said this animal is the one we have on the Atlantic coast of Europe. It just creeps into the Western Mediterranean, which is where Clement found it. I must say that I haven't looked at the genetics of our Diogenes, but I'm certain from the descriptions of the colour that these guys give for this animal that this is the thing we should be calling it. We should be calling it Curvy Manus. And there you see, it's got this left hand whitish pale claw. And the critical thing, you might think, my goodness, how can you see that? But on the base of the antennae here, you've got a blue spot and you can just see it there. This is a rather sandy crab because it's trying to bury itself. But in clean animals, that really is a very prominent feature, this blue spot at the base of the antennae. And that is unique to Diogenes curvimanus. These 2 guys don't have blue spots. In fact, they don't have real blue tints to them at all. So this is the one, this one to photograph I took somewhere off the Dorset coast. If you then go to look at these amazing pictures of Almon et al., you can look at your curvimanus and you can see these blue spots at the base of the antennae. And it also has these brown marks at the base of the eyes and on the antennules. And often there's a tiny little dark bright blue triangle on these antennules as well, which show up. If you look at what we used to call pugulator, what really is called pugulator, which we don't get up this way, there's no blue on it at all. And it particularly, okay, you need a dead crab to see it, or at least poke it out of its shell. It has these red marks on the back. I've collected 1 or 2 of ours locally, and they're absolutely plain like this. They don't have these red marks. So I'm very happy that we're looking at Almon's pictures, that this is the one we have. So it's no longer pugulator, we need to call it curvimanus, the south claw hermit crab. Getting in real close and personal to these things. You can see the blue spot at the base of the antennae, bright blue here. You can also see that tiny little blue triangle on the antennules and that dark line I was showing you. The eye colour, you need to be a bit careful because when I collected them, And I had these photos, this is from in the field, I hadn't collected this one, the nice sort of creamy coloured eyes. And Almon use eye colour quite a lot in their sort of diagnoses of which crab you've got. But the minute these things are dead, these go black. So you've really got to be sure that you're looking at, even when you do it by freezing, that it goes black. So you need to be very careful how you handle your animal if you're going to use Almon's key. The other interesting thing about this crab is that you see there's a really short antennae. They're not, it's sort of banded white and grey, possibly. But the striking thing about these antennae is how these terrifically long hairs on it. And I think what happens when they live on very sandy beaches, and when they're worried about something, they immediately bury. And I think they put these two antennae together to try and keep a kind of snorkel up to the surface so they don't suffocate, so they can maintain a sort of cavity of water under here, even in a fairly sandy habitat. And essentially, they're meshing together these two antennae to make a kind of snorkel so they can pull clean water through and remain hidden, but manage to circulate water over their gills inside the shell. But you've got these crucial blue marks which make it curvimanus. And if you look at any South Claw hermit crab photographs on, like in Google Images, if they're a Northern European species location, you can pretty well guarantee you're going to be able to see these blue marks, even on some fairly crummy photographs of crabs. So that's the character that makes it curvimanus, even though I haven't looked at its genetics. So there is still only one species of South Claw hermit crab on the British and Irish list. And this is the name that I suggest we should give it, Diogenes curvimanus. I don't quite know why they thought it needed to be the curved hand hermit crab, but can't remember, there might be something about the shape of the joints or something, but this is the one I think we have in Ireland. So, good old Selby in 1921 said, it may yet be found on the south and southwest Irish coasts. Lo and behold, McGrath and co doing the Biomar survey did find it in Irish waters. But these placed black spots here. They looked at all these white spotted beaches, but did find it on the sites with black spots in 1995, 96 and 99. So was it absent before, or were people just not looking? That's an interesting question. And then we've got one Seasearch record from 2017 when Tony and Charlotte were down in Derrynane. She found it on the beach there, which is an absolutely perfect beach for that particular crab. Nice, clean, fairly exposed, but not too exposed. Nice, clean sand, not too coarse, not muddy. Perfect beach. And lots of these other sites facing to the west like this provide excellent habitat for that particular crab. I suspect you probably won't, oh yes, you get it in Anglesey, so the chances are it would turn up on the east coast here because there are endless beaches there to be searching. But Selby felt it should have been there, so almost 100 years later, the thing finally turned up officially. And this is Charlotte's picture of it in Kerry. And you instantly know it's the South Claw hermit crab. It's got its left claw, the biggest, it's dragging behind as the crab runs way out of the picture at the top here. It's nice, clean, sandy beach, that, not much sediment on it. So the other group I was just going to have so with the hermit crabs, I mean, I'd be interested in any data you've got, because as you see, there aren't any Irish records. And I think with Almon's guide, any hermit crab picture you've got, you'll be able to identify. And I think you might be surprised that you've got more than just a hermit crab. I think you should have I don't know, 3 or 4 species at least, commonly, and then other ones maybe in slightly more specialist habitats like the south claw.
Lynn, I've got one question, which is somebody wanted to know what email address you wanted pictures sent to.
Dorset Seasearch Diving at gmail.com. That's the easiest one, I think.
And the second thing then is Libby Scarp has put some pictures of some hermit crabs from Mayo into the chat as well.
Okay, right, should we look at those now?
Yeah, I think it would, before you get started on the others.
Pictures in here. Right. Ooh, I can download that. Yep, there we go. So Libby's first one. Presumably these are Irish ones, are they?
As far as I know, they're pictures she took in Mayo.
Okay, because somebody once sent, John Moore sent me some pictures of a crab, and I looked at it. I said, where was this taken? He said, oh, yes, that was New Zealand. So I think this is a common hermit crab. Can you see my mouse or not? Probably not.
No.
So I'm not sharing the page. Sorry, if I stop share that one and then try and share the crab. Share that one. Right, you seeing Libby's crab?
Yeah.
Excellent. Right, so if we try and zoom in a bit more, can I do that? Yeah. So if you look at this one here, first thing you can see very easily, it has plain antennae. So you could hazard a guess that it's probably a Pagurus species. This one's not quite so beautifully coloured. He's got rather more shabby, I don't know, putty coloured socks on. This is a common hermit crab, and really distinctive character for them is you see these lines of really big tubercles on the right-hand claw, on this sort of, I don't know, the forearm, if you like. The claw's hidden under there, but these are quite characteristic of that species. And again, you've got fairly yellowy green eyes, and you probably might just be able to make under that plus sign slightly blue tinge at the base of the antennules. And the juveniles tend to be slightly less colourful, and the colour varies with habitat, of course. You know, so Almon's pictures might apply in Portugal, but if you like in these ones, in a shallow rock pool, probably, were they? Fairly shallow among all this calcareous alga anyway. So this is a common hermit crab, would be my best opinion on that one. And then there was another one, wasn't there? Chat. Have I jammed it all up? No, there we go. Download that one. No. Stop sharing that and then try that again. It wants me to save it somewhere. How tedious. Let's just put it there. Try and find it. There we go. So again, have you got the hermit crab? Yes, everybody seeing that one?
Yep.
Interesting. Sort of feel it might be a common hermit crab again, but looking at the colour of its legs, And the antennae have got sort of red stripe there and a blue end. Did you have an image of the thing from the front?
Hi, no, sorry, I don't. It was blowing an absolute gale. I was balancing on the rocks on tiptoes, trying not to fall in an inappropriate coat. It was a precarious position I was in to try and snatch the photos.
This one looks interesting. If you do have a hermit crab, these portrait ones like you had in the other image are perfect, because it gives you, because having the fronts of the claws is quite useful. But I think that might be an interesting one, maybe if you ever get back there, to try and get the, full frontal of him. I guess a Pagura species, but it just looks slightly weird colouring for a common one.
The coast was littered with them there. They're absolutely littered with hermit crabs.
Well, you'll be able to get a nice, good front view of it then. That would be great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'll go back.
Good. And do send, if you get more images of it, do send them.
Will do, thank you.
And if it's a common hermit crab, try and get the sort of the sculpturing on the claw, the big claws, quite useful. Yeah. But here you've already beginning to get the detail of the antennae, and that just doesn't look right for a common hermit crab. And I'd have said the eyes weren't quite the right colour.
Yeah.
And remember that, you may have something really quite different.
You always see the best things when you can't get the great photos.
But I mean, this photo is well good enough. So the really frustrating thing looking at Almon's guide is how amazing coloured animals they have, and we've got nothing as exciting as that. But if you wait, is anybody else got any more pictures?
Jonathan has put in one as well, and that one
exiting his shell.
Yes.
Right. Let's see if we can get that one up. Where are you? Oh, everything covers everything else. Oh, that was 714, so that's the one we want. This is a very similar coloured animal to the one that Libby had. Yeah. You're seeing it, aren't you? Yep. It's missing its right claw. It's got plain antennae. It's got very strongly marked toothed legs. I think this is probably a common hermit crab, Pagurus bernhardus. It's got greenish eyes. It's got plain antennules, whereas Libby's ones had slightly red ones. I also find it difficult because I only ever look at hermit crabs in water, and once they're on the beach, they look so different. I've been having great discussion with my local beach walkers, saying, what do you see in a hermit crab in your hand on the beach? It looks very different to one in the water. But I'd say that was Pagurus bernhardus. Is that all of them?
There's another one there from Julia, from County Cork.
Right. Oh yes, I just noticed Dorset Seasearch diving. I'll just correct that. Can I?
Diane has already corrected it. I picked up the Dorset Seasearch from from one of the websites in Dorset.
Oh yeah, Dorset Seasearch diving's the one to send to me, please.
Okay.
Data, that goes there. That goes there. Excellent. This is a different one. This is the one I was talking about right at the start of the one I introduced to the hermit crab. So here we've got Anapagurus hindmani. And you can tell that because this one's a female with this really, it looks like a bit like a boxing glove, almost pure white, the glove bit, slightly orangey behind. And she's got nice blue, cream and white football socks. These antennae here, you can see they're striped rather than plain. So they've flecked black and chocolate and white, or red and white really. And then if you'd had the thing in water, you'd see that these antennules were very long. And I'm wondering, did you notice whether it had eggs on it? I was wondering if these black things were eggs on the back, seeing as it's a female. But so that's a female based on the colour of the legs, the spotted antennae, and this big white football sort of boxing glove for the females. If it was a male, it would be more this colour, sort of orangey. This big white glove. Nice one. Is that it? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So what are you seeing now? Are you seeing anything? Spider crab?
Yeah, one large spider crab.
That makes sense. Good. Let's get rid of this clutter and then I can see what I'm doing. Right. So spider crabs. I was trying to find some images, you know, some animals behaving. And this is quite an interesting behaviour picture of the reef in Dorset. The first thing you notice, of course, is this big male spiny spider crab. But if you look in under here, he's obviously guarding a female, much smaller crab here. So he's waiting for her to molt, and then they can mate. So behaviour pictures and sort of crabs in their habitat too, rather than, you know, sort of macro photos that I've been showing, that I've been taking. These sort of crabs at home, I've been calling it, as a request going out. Right, can we move on? Yes. So spider crabs, what have we got? How do we decide where we are? There are a few characters that we can look at sort of generally. Fairly small crabs, less than about 1.5 centimetres, very long walking legs, long and slender. The longest legs much longer than the claws. So the ones that legs with the claws on are usually very short. So if you go back to this fella, he's got very long claws. The ones we're talking about here have got very short claws. So you then come up with 3 possible groups. So you can work on those on the basis of the shapes of their heads. I'm sure you're all familiar with Macropodia and the Anatchus ones. This fellow with its little tubercle on its eyes, not quite so easy to pick up. Then you've got these strawberry crabs with sort of cream and spiny tubercles on the backs of on the carapace. So if you start looking at good old scorpion spider crab, Anatchus dorsetensis, I've spelt that wrong, haven't I? Sorry. This is quite a spectacular view of a male. These purple armpits here show that it's a male. And a particular character of this species is the way it always holds its second pair of walking legs right out in a sort of, you know, fairly aggressive stance. And the other useful character I find is this oval white eye, which is quite different from the other 2 Anatchus species. It's sort of oval and vertically oval. And they're usually much more heavily decorated than this one. Here's a female, also spelt wrong. Again, this pair of legs is really held out very straight. It's much thicker than all the other ones. This is a female, much lighter claws, but still those rather googly, vertically pale eyes. There's 2 species here that you might, I think, I'm not sure we can distinguish them. There's the Leach's spider crab and the slender-legged spider crab. And basically to identify it, you've got to get really up close and personal and look up their nose. And I think you can't do it from underneath. You have to really grab the animal and take the sponge off it. And I feel that on the whole, I don't want to do that. So I suspect that these two species are mixed up in our records. Because interestingly, the Irish records are all for Leptocarus. The English ones are for Phalangium. So is there really a difference across the Irish Sea, or is it a kind of fashion, if you like, to call it one on one side of the Irish Sea and a different name on the other? And really, I don't think you can tell. I'm wondering, some of them have incredible red eyes with these white spots on them. I don't have enough data yet to know whether that might be a good character to distinguish them. Or are you looking at boys and girls? You know, it's very difficult to, without, you know, bringing bucketfuls of them, bringing them back in bucketfuls, you're not going to get an easy answer just by looking at them in the field, I think, unless you really seriously disturb them. And look at this colour on this one, it's amazing. And very often they have this pink hue on their legs as well. I mean, this guy looks like he's, I'm sure it's a male. He's sitting there with his red eyes and his red antennules. And whether that might be a useful character, I don't have enough data. So anybody who's got observations on these, it'd be really useful to get some feedback. This one to me looks like it's got rather long legs. So is it the long-legged one? I don't know. These ones have got interesting behaviour. You get them in anemones. I think this was a picture from Mulroy Bay. And somebody in the south of France had looked at a whole bunch of these things, and they'd found these groups of anemones, and they'd found the crab in each group of anemone, and they'd sort of mapped them out on an area that they could swim round. And basically they found that the crab in the anemones was always a female, but there were one or two males that used to do a tour, almost a daily tour around their territory, checking on the females sheltering in the anemones and trying to assess whether they were just about to molt and therefore were appropriate. You know, they'd hang around with the ones that were going to molt. Because I suspect that it's the last male that molts, that mates with the female before she molts, who then fertilizes the eggs that arrive afterwards. So, you know, it's quite important to be there at that crucial moment. So these crabs had obviously had a territory or an area that they were working to see which girls were ready for mating. These are the macropodius, they're much lighter looking animals. Possibly, this is a very undecorated one. The proportions of the antennae versus their little noses might be something, but this is the bit they first stick something on. So it's very often extremely difficult to see what you're looking at. Because if you look at the guides to this particular genus, basically you're meant to be looking at their noses and the length of the nose versus the length of the antennae, and where the nose comes versus the first joint of the antenna. And you can appreciate, if you're looking at something that's dressed itself up like this, those aren't really characters that are very helpful in the field. And another one of them also has a very sickle-shaped claw on the fifth walking leg. But again, you know, you're going to have to handle the animal and probably squish it to try and get a good view of, you know, the shape of this claw and has it got teeth or hairs. You know, it's kind of detail. It's very difficult to get a hold of, but maybe the colour characters and things, there just isn't enough data. Because mostly people look at dead stuff. And this, if you've got a dead thing, this is something you can really look at. You can pull all the decoration off, squish it down on a dish and really measure things out, but that's not really what we're about. And this is Cranch's spider crab. It's quite a different looking animal. It's got the legs, you've noticed these legs are very short in proportion to its rather tubby body. I've never seen one. Tina found one in Loch Fyne last year. It's got really much bigger eyes, and it should have a little tubercle on them. That's what makes it characteristic. But it just looks a very different animal to certainly this thing, and even that one. You know, you can see the legs are much, much longer. Strawberry crabs are quite jolly. But for them, if you want to know which species you've really got to get down and look at their backsides here and see the pattern of these little tubercles. And you also need to look at the tubercles in under here. So in that case, a really super macro approach probably needs to be used on these animals, unless you bring them home and kill them, of course. And then we've got these other spider crabs, the four-horned one, the great spider crab, and the spiny, which we've looked at. These ones have got very different horns at the front. Guess what? The four horns got four. You've got the eyes here and the shape here. There's two species, and it depends on the shape of this area here as to which one you have. The great spider crab's got quite a different rostrum shape. And the spiny spider's got two little spikes like that, you know, so their heads, if you look at them, do look different. Unfortunately, these two particularly keen on dressing up, so you can't always see the features that you really need. So the rostral horn's quite a good thing if you're going to photograph it. Grab a picture of that if you can. So here's a four-horned. I mean, you'd hardly say it was a crab looking at this. There's its little backside. It's been very busy dressing up its front side, but forgotten to put on any trousers on. But here you can see the eyes just there, but everything else is hidden. I think this Pisa has red eyes. So if you can get a picture of the eye. And we need more data on that because, of course, nobody's looked at things in life in that sort of detail. And this is one on the beach, turned over in an undignified way. It's a female with these tiny little claws, a nice pink nail varnish, four horns. And the eyes, it's in here somewhere. So definitely see four horns there. There's another one here. I mean, just on a dive, you'd hardly notice that on a bit of dead mole bed like that. But you can just see the red eye here. But there's no way you're going to make out the presence of four horns, but I'm sure that's what it is. Again, it hasn't particularly done well on its putting its trousers on, but its little red eye here. But all the four horns are all hidden under all this stuff. So really, to look at the thing in the field, you'd have to scrape all that off, and I think that's just too much interference. Hyas is a bit easier. They're not quite so busy decorating themselves. If this one gets to be quite big, it can be sort of 10 centimeters across the legs, I should think, more possibly. It's got a very, I don't know, teardrop, pear-shaped carapace like that. And that shows up quite nicely in this picture here. There are two species, of course, which complicates life. But the other one, if you look at it from on above, has got a very different shaped carapace. It's got this flange just behind the eyes, which makes it all look kind of wasted. The books say lyre shaped, if you know what a lyre looks like. So we can get both of those species in Ireland. And then just because they think, oh, spiny spider crabs are easy, you'd see this thing wandering around over the seabed, which could possibly be one of these, this fella dressed up, possibly. But if you look in close on these ones, the eye gives them away. You see this great big eye on a white stalk, green. So that's a female spiny spider crab. And in that case, if you turned it over, you immediately see it was a female. And all the little claws would have black tips to them, which the other species don't. So these spiny spike crabs have black tips to the claws, which, I mean, just turning them over and then putting it back again, I don't think upsets it. So this little fella here, it's a girl. You know, you'd miss that again, but you can tell it's the spiny by its eye colour and its black tipped claws. If you turned it over. And there's the male. You can just about make the black tip claws, maybe at the bottom here, the tips of these claws are black. So spiders. Nope. So it's over to you people now to get some more records down into your biodiversity centre recording, so as we know more about what's going on and you can prove what's. And at the moment, if you can get up close and personal, people, well, I mean, you know what people describe things, stuff that's been sat in formalin for probably 100 years. You see, this one's got red